Hey, what's up guys? I'm back again for another video, and today we're going to be riding the R6. Oh yeah, Yamaha really hit the ball out of the park with the styling. This bike is beautiful. The best looking 600 out right now. And when I say 600, I'm talking mid-tier bikes, you know, including the cheater bikes like the 636. This bike is definitely the best looking of them. It has a very, very aggressive look, and it turns heads. And the colors that they've offered, like this matte grayish black right here, oh my god, it's so gorgeous. The paint finish on this bike is amazing. It has no scratches, and it always looks clean. This is my brother's bike, and he doesn't have any tank pads or anything. You know, people put tank pads on to protect it from scuffing, like the button or zipper on your jeans from scuffing the tank. He doesn't have any of that on this bike, and we've both been riding it for about a year. This tank has seen a lot of buttons and zippers. And it doesn't have a scratch on it. It's flawless. It's just a freaking gorgeous paint job. Super functional. Props to Yamaha for the design of this bike, for sure. You know, I would put this bike up there, the styling, I'd put this bike up there with Ducatis. This bike looks, oh god, I might get flamed for this. To me, this bike looks more aggressive than the Panigales. Because to me, the Panigales are more elegant. You know, they have like beautiful flowing lines and curves on it. But this bike just looks like a track monster ready to go. This just has that really aggressive look to it, with the little vents on the tank and the headlights especially. I'm going to go ahead and get some footage of the bike. I can't believe how smooth the throttle is. It's really kind of shocking. This is really a follow-up video to the video I put out talking about are Ducatis worth it. And I said in that video that the Ducati is better than Japanese bikes. And I got some people that were agreeing with me, but I got some comments from people saying that they were unsubbing and just that I should think before I speak, basically calling me an idiot. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do a little review on the R6, and I'm going to go ahead and set this straight. You know, I love Japanese bikes. You guys, woo! I do. I love Japanese bikes. They're sweet. I like all of them for the most part. You know, Gixxers, Ninja. But I figured I'd go ahead and do a little review on this bike and talk about, you know, some of the differences between this and the Ducati while I'm at it, so you guys can better understand where I'm coming from, because it's an opinion. Like, you guys, some people that commented on that video just seem to forget that it's just my opinion, you know. I prefer the Ducati over a Japanese sport bike. And people break out their pitchforks when you say that. But so we'll go ahead and start by just talking about what it feels like to ride this bike. Right off the bat, initial impressions, it is extremely smooth. Like, very, 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 very smooth. The throttle is so smooth. And I'm in A mode too, which is aggressive, or, you know, whatever. There's an A mode and STD, which is smoother, and the B, which is lower power. But I'm in the A mode, which is like the highest power mode, the highest throttle setting. And this bike is so smooth. The other thing is, it feels, you know, it's hard to explain this, but the bike feels very light. Like, moving around the driveway and whatnot, the bike feels lighter than the Ducati to push around. The V2, that is. This whole video I'll be referring to the Ducati V2 because that's the bike that I ride. Right off the bat, it feels lighter than the Ducati, just pushing it around. But the thing that's so strange to me about the R6 is the steering kind of feels heavy. Not necessarily in a bad way. Don't get me wrong, this bike is super nimble. But the steering is kind of like, it's kind of lazy, you know. It takes a second to push this bike over. You got to really commit to a turn, if you guys can understand what I mean by that. It feels like the bars are harder to turn, which is kind of strange because this is a smaller bike than the V2, and this doesn't have any steering dampener or anything like that like the V2 does. So you would think, you know, that the steering would feel really light, but it doesn't. It feels pretty heavy, actually. But the plus side of that is this bike feels super planted. Now, you get that feeling like you're on rails, you know? Like people say that sometimes about sports cars. You get that feeling with this bike because it is just so stable. And the other thing that's strange is around where I was just sitting in the RPMs, I think that's 5,500. There's a dead spot in the power and the torque. But you get over that 8,000. See, this bike really needs wound out. I mean, obviously, if you guys are watching this video, you probably know this or have heard this, but the R6, 600s in general, but specifically the R6, you really need to wind it up, because that peak power is at 13,000 something RPMs, you know? Whereas the Ducati's peak power is like 10,500 or whatever, red line. But this bike, it doesn't even start making a lot of power until about 8,000. So it really needs wound up if you're gonna try to get a lot of power out of this bike. As far as technology and safety and everything, this bike has front and rear ABS, non-adjustable, and it has traction control, and that's about it. Obviously 599cc, putting down somewhere around 113 horsepower if I remember correctly. I love the sound and how, oh man, like, that's the one thing. I wish my Ducati was this smooth. The throttle is so smooth. This bike is razor sharp. And see, like, that's a good thing, you know? Like, it's good to have a sharp bike. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, that's a good thing. But when you're riding on the street, you don't always want to have a bike that's so razor sharp. You understand? And that's why I said that I prefer the Ducati, because the Ducati doesn't feel so sharp. The Ducati is very strange because it doesn't feel super sharp initially, just putting around or just cruising. But then, like, if you start to hammer on it, it starts to feel sharper. But this bike is like sharp all the time. Always sharp. And like, I was getting so much hate on that video for saying that I prefer the Ducati. Well, I just don't prefer this much sharpness, you know, on a street bike. On the track, I mean, everybody knows the R6 is proven. It's a sweet track bike. But for the street, it's not totally my cup of tea. I would buy an R6. I would buy an R6. Don't get me wrong. You know, I would consider it, because that razor sharpness, even though it's not my preference, it's just so sharp. Wow. Okay, so the next, we'll just move on. The next point that I'd like to talk about is the brakes on this bike. They're not the greatest, to be honest with you. In stock form, they're really not the greatest. They have like a very hard initial bite, kind of. I mean, I don't know. It's about perspective somewhat, because if you ride bikes a lot that have like hard initial bite, this will probably just feel normal to you. But the brakes feel like hard, like physically hard. They're very tight, if that makes sense. Like, when you pull the lever, you have to give it a lot of pressure to get any sort of braking out of it. But you can't, it's hard just to feather it because the brake is so heavy. it's hard just to feather it because the brake is so heavy that that you need to squeeze it. But at the same time, it's got kind of a hard initial bite, but then after that, they just don't feel that powerful. So maybe some new pads or something, especially if you're tracking this bike. The other thing is the sound. This typical inline 4, but it sounds good. It sounds damn good, actually. I love the sound of an inline 4 screaming. And the suspension, you know, while I said that it is hard, it does feel a little bit lazy, like not super nimble. But like if you just like forget about that and, you know, just get the bike to do its thing, force it to turn, it becomes nimble, if that makes sense. But yeah, like if you force the bike to turn, like you say, oh, turn, push the bars, it becomes nimble. But you really kind of got to force it. Man, I do not like these brakes very much. The clutch and the shifter, spot on. They feel pretty great. So easy to downshift through gears on this bike. So easy. This bike has a beautiful shifter and clutch. The seating position, there's just something about it to me that is not comfy. The seat is very hard. It's got almost no softness to it whatsoever. Number one. Number two, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but riding this bike hurts my neck and my wrists, puts more pressure on them, more than my Ducati V2 does. My Ducati V2, I feel a lot comfier. And the other thing about this bike is it feels very flat. Like, it feels like you're sitting on a plank of wood. You understand what I'm saying? Got that plank action on here. And look at me tippy-toeing. But the thing is, if you're like shorter, you know, I'm 5'6", the seat height on this bike is really high for a 600. And this bike really is, this would be a good choice if you were a taller rider looking for a 600. Like, I like to put my butt all the way back in the seat against the passenger seat, or the passenger seat delete, whatever you have. I like to get my butt all the way back in the seat, and to do that on this, my knees are barely even on the tank anymore. Like, I could barely even reach the bars. Not comfortably. I can't reach the bars comfortably with my butt all the way back. I have trouble getting myself into like a position that I enjoy for cruising on this bike, and I have trouble getting myself into a position for spirited riding on this bike also. And I think part of that is just the fact that I'm 5'6", you know, and this bike really does feel like it's catered toward taller riders. Now when I say taller, I'm talking close to like 6 foot, you know, maybe 6'1". But if you're like 5'6", or like 5'4", or something like that, you're a shorter rider, this bike is pretty difficult to get yourself comfortable on and find a good position. The one thing I noticed too is the mirrors are actually not too bad. I know it's a weird thing to point out on a sport bike, but if you ride sport bikes, you probably realize that a lot of them have very useless mirrors. But the mirrors on this bike actually are pretty solid, pretty usable, not gonna lie. Oh, listening to that puppy roar. Nothing like winding out a 600. Woo! Wow, she picks up. She definitely picks up, I'll tell you that. And see, you know, this is where this bike feels at home to me. Is winding it out and just flying. This bike feels so at home, just romping on it, letting her wind out. But see, the thing is, I ride mostly street, and odds are, if you're watching this, you probably ride mostly street too. You know, maybe the occasional track day, but majority of the time, I'm riding on the street. And that's like the thing about the R6 that I don't particularly love, is it's not very happy cruising around, just going slow. And now typically when I would say that about a bike, I would be referring to the fact that the bike is jerky at low speeds. And don't get me wrong, this bike is not jerky at low speeds at all. This bike is super smooth. Even at low speeds, in the highest power setting, or the throttle setting, you know, this bike is super butter, razor sharp smooth. But the thing is, like, it's not comfortable, you know, and like obviously it's a sport bike, whatever, but compared to other sport bikes, it's not comfortable. It's not as comfortable as the Ducati V2, or even, you know, a Ninja 636. I find more comfortable than this. And this bike just wants to be revved. You feel me? Woo! It's definitely not a happy camper just putting around on a little Sunday afternoon stroll. Which, you know, if you're not using the bike for commuting or just putting around or anything like that, then like who cares, right? It's not really an issue, and this might be the bike for you. But the thing is, like, I like to do it all on my Ducati. I like to just cruise and take it easy, and then occasionally let her open. And I just don't think that this is necessarily the bike for you, if that's what you want to do. But I think this would make an incredible track bike. Incredible track bike. And if you're somebody that just, like, all you ever do is hit up the twisties and let it eat always, yeah, this is probably a pretty good choice. If you do some upgrades to the brakes, this would really be a Goldilocks bike for spirited riding or track day riding. But for going on adventures and finding new roads, and obviously some spirited riding here and there. I don't think this is really the right choice, to put it bluntly. And I got so much hate for saying that I preferred my Ducati V2 over Japanese bikes. Like, this is why. These reasons I'm going to explain to you guys are why. Like, I said that well, specifically what got me a lot of hate is I said that the Ducati's better than Japanese bikes. And now let's take a minute to think about it, alright? The Ducati is a mid-tier bike, you know. Technically, if it was an inline-4 Japanese bike, it'd be a 750. But it has a 6-axis IMU, auto blipper, all of the goodies. You don't see that on middle-level Japanese bikes. You know, we got traction control and ABS, and that's some throttle settings. That's the extent that the technology goes on this. And the V2 sticker price is $4,000 more. If you're buying a new bike and you could afford the R6, you could probably stretch to the Ducati. The only difference being the maintenance. But if we're talking buying new, you know, you're under warranty, so it's not the end of the world. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand why I got so much hate for saying that. It's just my preference. I'm not saying that like Japanese bikes are bad. I really do enjoy this R6. But for my personal bike that I ride all the time, you know, this ain't the bike for me. I much prefer the V2. Taking the R6 out once in a while and winding it out, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a whole different experience. But you know, below 8,000, there's really not much power, to be totally honest. Another point that I'd like to touch on real quick is, you know, heat. A lot of people talk about the heat on the Ducatis, and the thing is, this R6 is toasty. You know, it's toasty. It is. The seat gets warm. It's only roughly 55 degrees out, and I can feel the heat of the bike. The bike's running at 170, but summer stop and go traffic, I've seen it 220, maybe even a little over. So it's hot. If you hear all the people, you know, if you hear all the people talk about like how hot Ducati Panigales are, yeah, the R6 is pretty close. Subaru. Try not to get smashed by a Dodge Caravan. So yeah, this bike gets pretty toasty. That's another thing that you might want to know about. The suspension is very hard. Woo! You definitely feel every little bump and rock on this bike. Some of the bigger, well, I'm in Pennsylvania, so some of the Pennsylvania potholes are quite jarring. This bike feels super stiff. That's part of the sharpness that I touched on. Is this bike feels stiff as hell. And now the suspension's adjustable, so you know, you can soften it, but like right out of the box, we haven't adjusted this. We've left it how it came so far. It's freaking hard. And that does mean that you feel planted and like you can fly into corners and fly off the apex. But it also means that if you're on public roads and you're driving a little quicker than you should be and you hit a pothole, it's going to be jarring, to say the least. If I was buying a new track bike, I would strongly consider this. But as like a street bike, especially if it's your only bike, I think that there's better options. I think that the Ninja 636, well, I don't think, I know, it has a lower MSRP than this, makes more power than this. I've sat on it and I personally am comfier on it. And it has a quick shifter, which this doesn't have. You know, I think there's better options in this class for a street bike. Now for a track bike, though, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say that there are really much better options. If I had to choose between the Ninja 636, I mean, we're talking brand new here. Brand new Ninja 636, Gixxer 600, R6, or, you know, whatever the hell I mean, I don't even know what Honda's doing anymore, but with their middleweight bike. They don't even make the CBR 600 double R, as far as I know anymore. But long story short, if I was choosing a track bike, I'd probably choose the R6. Straight up. Because it's razor sharp. And the steering is a little strange. But once you're in the turn, and you're kind of locked. Like, you pick a trajectory, and this bike kind of locks onto where you need to go, and you feel really stable and planted in your lean angle. So while I said this bike feels a little lazy, it does. It feels kind of heavy to steer, but once you get it starting to steer, it's pretty sweet. And it takes turns like a monster. So I would choose this thing as a track bike. I just want to touch on the brake one last time, because back there at that last stop I did, I pushed on the rear brake a little harder, and it just further emphasized in my mind what I don't like about these brakes. You know, the rear brake, when you give it a lot of pressure, it feels hard at first. And then once you get past that initial hardness, it gets mushy, which is like a really strange feeling for a sport bike brake. It's not what you want. And then the initial hardness and then mush. It's definitely not the best setup for a bike like this. Now, I'm sure there's probably small changes, like maybe even just pads that'll help with that. So I'm not really going to say that that's a deal breaker for this bike. But just be aware that there are other bikes for this price that definitely have a better braking feel. For example, the Ninja 636. And if you step it up to, say, a Panigale, be it a 959 Corsa, you know, however it's pronounced, let me know in the comments. And or a V2, if you could swing for one of those, or maybe even an 899, then you're going to definitely benefit from much better brakes right out of the box. I mean, you're going to benefit from a lot of things, which is why I said I prefer Ducati. You know, throw me to the wolves, but it's the honest to God truth. But I'm going to go ahead and end my little time riding right now with one last statement. Am I having fun right now? The answer to that is hell yes. I am having fun on this Yamaha R6. And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. So I'll tell you straight up, this is a fun bike. If you're thinking about one, don't be afraid to go test ride it. And, you know, there's plenty of reviews on YouTube of this bike. I obviously didn't go super in depth with the technical specs. I just wanted to give you guys my opinion and do a little follow-up video to my video where I was talking about why I prefer Ducatis over Japanese bikes, and set the record straight that I definitely love Japanese bikes, and they have a spot in my heart, no doubt. And the R6 is a sweet bike, and if you end up buying one, or you do own one, I'm happy for you. Ride safe, and I already know you're having fun, because I can't see myself riding this bike and being bored. Hey guys, thanks for checking out my video. I know this was a longer one. I tried to condense it down, but there were a lot of points I wanted to go over. If you want me to keep making long videos, then go ahead and let me know in the comments, but I'm going to try to put out some shorter videos, because I know on YouTube people's attention spans aren't super long, so I just wanted to do a little follow-up video to my video, Are Ducatis Worth It? Because some people got pretty upset that I said that I think the Ducati is better than Japanese sport bikes. And don't get me wrong, I love Japanese sport bikes, and I love the R6, so I'm not saying that they're bad bikes. But my current goal is 1,000 subscribers, so if you like the video, go ahead and subscribe or share it with some friends. I appreciate it, and thanks for checking out my video.